Are you ready? Are you uh our show and our guests? Are you ready for the you ready then? Hello with me, Anna, and who are you? Are we going to and right, well done. And our guest today, would you like to say who our guest is? Our guest today is Joe Nutkins from the wonderful dog training for Essex and Suffolk. Hello, Joe. Welcome.
Hi, hello, both of you.
I wasn't sure whether he was going to be up for performance because he was sound asleep about 2 minutes ago.
No,
So,
well, he's got into it, hasn't he? He realised he's got a job to do. He's ever a professional.
well, in fact, I mean, this this fits into some of what you do because you do lots of trick training
Yeah,
and also do lots of dog sports training.
yeah.
So basically, you are the fun person that dogs like to hang out with, I imagine.
That does seem to be the case. People do give us some very nice feedback on the fact that their dog just kind of goes, "Are we going to train this week? Is it here that we're coming to?" And they just kind of perk up and want to come in and get on with stuff. Even our general obedience training, we've got extra bits and pieces in there to make it fun.
Good, because that's exactly what works for dogs.
Yeah,
It's what for people,
yeah,
but somehow we forget and get everything all serious.
yeah.
Tell us the dog sports training that you do.
Okay, so there's quite a few dog sports about. The ones that I tend to gear towards are the ones that we can do with more dogs. So we do things like canine hoopers, we do agility, things like parkour, and tribal, so that dogs who are younger, dogs who are senior, they can all take part and you can just adjust it for them. So while there are a lot of other dog sports out there, and you've got clubs that are specify, in a one sport, we do a lot of the sports that we can do with a lot more dogs so that people can do it for longer.
Tell us why that's important. Why is it important that we get our dogs involved in sports? Surely the exercise for them is just take them for a walk.
Yeah, so not all dogs enjoy walks, which might sound surprising to a lot of people. So there are dogs that either are a bit nervous, or that can get overexcited, or dogs that just don't enjoy the the longevity of a walk. So actually having smaller bursts of activity work better for them. Dogs that really don't like having other dogs coming into their space. So it means if they're doing something like a sport, they've got their own space to work in. They're working on focusing on their owner and not worrying about anyone else and whatever else is going on around them. And they actually get a lot of, not only are they getting a lot of the physical exercise, but they're getting the mental brain work as well. So dogs go home from doing their sports training and they just sleep for hours. Whereas a lot of dogs can come home from their walk if they're not enjoying that walk, and actually they're stressed and they're not able to relax properly. So they're not getting as much from the walk as they could be. So the sports can be another way of helping dogs through that, or alongside walks. If you've got a very energetic dog, that a walk might not be enough. I do a lot of dog sports with my dogs. I've got something called ME as well as a couple of other chronic illnesses. So going for a walk to just go out and walk, although my dogs would probably come home very, very alert and awake, I'd actually tire much more quickly. And I've got to think about where my leads are and what other people are doing and everything else. And on a bad fatigue day, I'm not 100% focused. But if I go out and take my dogs to do some sports, I'm working one dog at a time and it's our space to work in. And I've got someone overseeing what I'm doing and helping me. And it just works so much better for us.
So this is obviously a wonderful thing because actually, I have to say we have a bit of experience of parkour and we have a fair amount of experience with agility.
Brilliant.
And really liked with about doing that with Teddy is that there was a real sense of learning how to work together.
Yeah.
And when about the dogs focusing on their handler, on their person, I could really relate to that. And it's that feeling of being a team working together.
Yes, definitely. I love the teamwork side. I mean, I've got
Think
3 dogs, and having 3 dogs, I'm splitting my time between them. But when we're doing the sports side of things, it's one dog at a time, and it's just you and your dog, and you get another side of your dog coming out a little bit when it's that kind of teamwork, because your focus is on them. We haven't got to worry about phones going off and anyone coming to deliver something to the door, or do I need to get anything else done at that time I'm doing that sport, or people are coming to do that sport. That's their time with their dog to just focus on them, and they get to learn more about what their dogs are telling them. So if their dogs are wanting to do a bit more, if they need to have a rest, if they're asking for more guidance because their dog's not too sure what they're asking them to do. So actually that teamwork isn't just me and my dog, but it's actually the interaction you're getting between them as well. It can really develop the bond, and it can also develop the confidence, not only in the dogs but in the handlers as well. And I've had quite a few people that have been nervous or shy come to do things like agility and hoopers, and they're confident. You just see the confidence, and when the handler confidence increases, the dog's confidence increases as well, and they just make amazing teams. It's so nice to see that progression happening week after week.
Well, I'll tell you when I realized that what we had been doing in agility and in the parkour workshops that we did really had done something between us. We were walking on a beach one day, and the tide was coming in, and we needed to get across to another part.
Gosh.
And there were boulders, I mean, pretty large boulders.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can climb over those, but Teddy is going to struggle.
Yeah.
We worked together. It was, I never thought we could ever do anything like that.
Yeah.
But he understood what I was doing completely and utterly. And he would, climb onto a rock. And if he was stuck, he would just wait for me. I would get in position. I would help him. And we actually did it. And every time I go to that beach subsequently, I mean, we don't live there, but when we've been on holidays and I go there, I remember that precious time. And equally, there was another time when we were again on holiday, walking along walking on a path that became steeper, so that there was a very steep fall
Yeah.
to beneath. And I hadn't realized that this path had probably not been walked for a very long time. And it got to a point where I was thinking, I I need to have Teddy on a lead here because I'm concerned. So anyway, I put him on the lead. If I This is a dog who at the time used to pull like you wouldn't, and he could easily have just trotted along ahead. But he was helping me. And on the way back, because there was only so far we could go, and we turned back, he led the way and found a better path for us.
Wow.
And there's a few times when we've been out on walks, nothing quite as dramatic as that, but we've gone, let's say, off piste a little bit. And we are definitely working together to
Yeah.
find, and I put that right back to the parkour and the agility that we did together.
Yeah. Yeah, the understanding's there both ways, isn't it? Yeah. Mine kind of do that when it's a muddy area, but I think it's more that they just don't like the mud rather than trying to help us through it. But if we follow them, we've always guaranteed a dry path.
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. But
Honestly.
it's that, isn't it? That learning that trust. So
Yeah, it is all about the trust. They trust that we can understand them, and that they're trusting that what we're doing is in their best interest as well. So if we're asking them to do something, okay, we'll do it. But also, I think you need to come with this way. Come and trust me because I can see you're stuck.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So this is one benefit of it's building that relationship between us and our dogs.
Definitely.
And some dogs really will enjoy agility.
Ooh.
Tell us about hoopers. Not as many people know about hoopers.
So hoopers is a really funny one to describe, especially if someone hasn't seen agility either. So if agility, if anyone hasn't heard of it, is using different obstacles basically for the dogs to navigate over and through and on top of. Whereas hoopers is the same concept. So we have equipment set up in a course for the dogs to navigate around, but it is stand up hoops. Lots and lots and lots of hoops. You have barrels for the dogs to go round in both directions. You have a touch and go mat, which is a flat mat with poles at either end, and they go through it lengthways. And we have tunnels, and in hoopers the tunnels are straight and only 1, 2 or 3 meters long, whereas in agility they're a lot longer and they might curve and funny shapes. So the equipment is a lot more basic in hoopers, but the idea is that it's no impact. Everything is completely flat. The base, the bottom of the hoop is completely flat on the floor. You don't go up at any heights at all. The sharpest turns that you do is around a big barrel. So it's actually a curve rather than a sharp turn. And that's what makes it nicer for senior dogs, dogs that have had past injuries, for younger dogs to do, because they haven't got any repetitive impact happening, which you do get in agility. So it's a softer sport, but you still work with the dogs to work on distance handling. You still want the dogs to learn what the equipment's called and to be able to move ahead, do really big curves, 20, 30 foot away from you, be able to turn left and right around the barrels on cue. So they've still got to use their mind. They've still got to navigate where we want them to get to. But to look at a course, if you haven't done it, you just kind of go, well, there's just some hoops and a couple of tunnels. But when you see the dogs work it, it's amazing. I love teaching it just as much as I like doing it with my dogs, because when you're watching the dogs, once they've learnt the basics and they can start doing courses, they absolutely love it. They love the fact that they're getting some direction from their owner and that they can run and go at their pace. And it's just amazing to watch. It really is.
It strikes me that I would have loved to have had this in Teddy's first year.
Yep.
I was waiting for him to be old enough, for his bones to be strong enough to be able to handle doing agility.
Yeah.
But something like this would have been brilliant because, mind you, it would have had to have been very short bursts, I think. But so when you're working, that's a good point, isn't it? A good question. When you're working with dogs that are under 1,
Yeah.
are you doing shorter sessions with them?
So if it's a class, when they first start out, it's lots of small exercises. So the dogs are working on maybe initially working on going through a hoop, then 2 hoops, and then we teach them a barrel. So they do a few minutes of training and then they stop. And then I go through another exercise and then they do a few more minutes of something else and then they stop again. So everything is broken down much, much more small so that they're not going to do like a whole hour non-stop, for example. I encourage people to completely take the dogs away from an exercise at the end of one. So they go away, they might play a game with them. Part of our outdoor paddock, we've got an area that's got much longer grass and a lot more different plants in, sort of in the background. So take the dogs there for a sniff about, really just get them out of training mode for a moment and then bring them back into it again. I've actually done some very, very, very lightweight hoopers with adaptation to 16 weeks. And for him, he's his 1-to-1. We don't do an hour when it's 1-to-1 for sports because it's just too much. But we've mixed it up with some tricks. And oh my God, he's done 3 sessions and he's just earned his first Hoopers Award because he's just picking it up so well. He's moving ahead. He's doing all the equipment. He's this tall.
I I want to see a video of this.
I have video. I will send you. I have video. I have pictures. I have everything. He's an amazing little dog. He's just passed his Good Citizen Puppy Foundation Scheme award as well. So he's just done that. So now he's working on bronze. Bless him. I've had a Cavalier kid, Charles, do the same sort of age. It's because their owners have understood keeping their sessions short and doing lots of tiny little sessions here and there throughout the day rather than trying to just stick with it and changing it up. Changing what you're working on a lot really does work for so many different breeds. Some breeds can work on one thing for a long time, but majority of dogs will, after a few repetitions, you can see them thinking, yeah, I've shown you I can do this. Why are we still doing this? So you need to change it, do something else, break them off and do something different before the next exercise, and just change the exercise completely sometimes. And it's all processing in the back of the mind. It's always still happening. But they need a chance to think about what they were doing, and then they start afresh again. So if a session's starting to go a little bit, okay, we did a few repetitions and now they don't seem to understand what I want, chances are the dog's getting a bit tired. Even though they might not look it, they're still active, but the brain's getting tired. And once the brain starts getting tired, they're not going to take a lot more in. So stop, do something different, let them rest, go and have a little game with them. You know, it depends on what they like to do. Next time you do a bit of training, it will have processed and they'll be able to progress from that, rather than trying to keep doing it on a session where they're too tired. But you see dogs tire in a class and they literally go from alert and yeah, we're doing this, to this blank, I don't know. My brain's just melted out of my ears. I'm really not sure what we're doing anymore. And you just see this change come over their face, where they've suddenly just got too tired to carry on. Which can be any age dogs, to be fair, but definitely when they're under one. So that's one of my dogs making a funny noise as she I think she's winding down to sleeping, so she just went ugh. All the air's coming out. But especially when they're under one, definitely keeping them sessions that bit shorter helps them keep the focus, but also keeps them motivated, because you don't want them going home from a session thinking, God, that was hard work. You want them going, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Exactly. It's as we've said all along, it has to be fun. And I do remember Teddy under one, his focus just wasn't there to be able to do an hour. And even when we, he's an easily bored kind of dog.
Yeah.
So cockapoos, I think need quite a lot of want just a lot of stimulation.
Yeah.
So yes, that's why I asked about how long your sessions are, because they definitely will tire. And what you said about the making mistakes. So that when I'm teaching him anything, if he's demonstrated that he knows it, but I ask him and he makes a mistake, I think it's time to stop and do something else.
Yeah. Perfect.
He's now he's done.
So, they're telling us, they're always telling us stuff. It's just we don't always pick up on it. But no, so that's absolutely perfect. Two of my dogs are terriers, and terriers are very similar in that they go, right, I've done it. What's next? Come on, next. Don't want to stay with that. What's the next thing?
Yeah, and you can always do the refinements, on the next session.
Yeah, definitely.
Mood to refine. You're trying to refine, and they're going, no, I'm done.
Yeah,
so
we've done this.
So hoopers are very low impact or no impact, in fact.
Yeah.
And so this is brilliant, but you're still working with the dog. So what about parkour? What is parkour?
So parkour has got the nickname of urban agility, but it's not set up in the same way as agility, where you would do lots and lots of obstacles in one go. What it really is using items that are in your immediate environment to teach your dog to do skills. So sometimes it might look like a trick, sometimes it will be more of a skill that you would use in something like agility, and other different types of dog sports. So for example, there is something called a tic tac, where we teach dogs on an incline to go up, round and back on themselves, and that almost mimics a little bit of a fly ball turn. So dogs that are going into fly ball would actually benefit from doing things like the tic tacs in parkour. So again, everything ties in quite nicely. So you would be able to use things that are in your house, things that are in your garden, things that are out on your walk, down the beach, you name it. There will be items that you can use for different types of skills for your dog. So there are different levels in parkour as well, and then obviously the higher the levels you go, they get more difficult by either adding in more repetitions, or more distance. A lot of the time is more distance happening. So you have things like obstacles to get your dog to go around the outside of, or they might be going under them. So you might ask them either to just literally just lower their head and go under, or to make it more difficult, they'd actually be crawling, completely crawling underneath an item. It might be getting into something. So at training, I've got some of the children's plastic Wendy houses, and we use that for getting in. So it's like getting dogs used to an item that's quite stable. It's not going to go anywhere. Because there's windows, we can help guide them in, we can get their confidence up. So then when they're getting into other items out on a walk, it's not so daunting for them. It means that dogs that maybe don't like traveling in the car, we can help them with getting into small spaces, and actually things like that mimic that. Working on things like walking on ramps and trying to think what I've got at work now that we walk on. Walking on bridge, we've got little bridges set up and things like that at work, and bridges where we've got planks and a gap, plank gap, so they're working on their footwork. That would then help dogs out and about if they're worried about different surfaces and different textures and things like that, because they're working on so many different types of equipment. So you might go into the woods and you've got a tree stump and you've taught your dog to do front paws up. You could practice front paws up on a tree stump. Makes for brilliant pictures, I will say. Photos with the paws up are amazing. If they've walked along a plank at training for parkour and you've got a tree that's blown down but secure still, you can ask your dog to walk along that. You know, you can ask them to jump over, you could ask them to crawl under things. So there's so many skills that you can teach your dog at home. For example, the weather's been really interchangeable everywhere the last few days, but where we are, it has been just rain. It's horrible. No one wants to do anything outside. So if your dog is getting the chance to practice these things indoors on equipment that you have at home, even just your furniture, hasn't got anything special, they learn those skills to then use on your walks. So if you're working on your dog's focus, if you're working on them being able to come back when you call them, walking on a nice loose lead, you can add these things in during your walks. So it's a sport to itself, and there's titles and levels that you can go through, but you can still work on the individual skills just anywhere you go with your dog, basically. And it gets to the point, it does get addictive, to the point where you go somewhere and you think, God, if only dogs were allowed in there, I could use that. Look, they could be climbing on that. They could go through there. They could go. It does get a bit worrying, but it's really fun. The dogs really absolutely love it. And I can't go past something now that's the right height for my dogs without them all just lining up with their paws up, waiting. You're bound to need to do this, so we'll just pose.
Yeah, they do enjoy it very much. And I can remember teaching Teddy round, under, and paws up using a chair in the kitchen.
Yep,
You know,
perfect.
that how I taught him. But it's very useful sometimes when you're in the countryside and you're walking along, and there's a stile or a gate, and you want to give him a bit of instruction on what to do. I guess the question a lot of people would be asking is, wouldn't dogs just naturally want to do this sort of thing on their own? Why do we need to teach them these things?
Some dogs might, some dogs problem solve. And it's a little bit breed dependent and it's a little bit personality dependent. So some dogs will naturally problem solve. They're the dogs that work out how to undo doors and undo bolts and, get into cupboards and eat something, but then they put the lid back on so that people haven't found out. Those dogs problem solve. So they would find out these, honestly, they would find out how to do these things. But there are a lot of dogs that just do not naturally work things through. And again, some of it's just the type of breed they are. They were never meant to do those sorts of jobs, and other dogs just haven't been in that circumstance. So an example, with my first two Norwich Terriers, Cassie and Taylor, I took them on holiday, and where we were walking, we were going up a lot of it was very, very hilly, and there were lots of areas where the water came from a stream, went across the path, and then carried on to the next part of the stream. And we got to one part that was probably just under a foot in width, and both dogs got to it and just stood. They're not water dogs. They don't like water at all. They just stood there looking at this water running past them. And I caught up with them and I said, over, because they could do agility, they could do parkour, they could do all of that stuff. Over, as in just jump. And they were, oh, okay, jumped over, carried on with the walk. But they didn't naturally think, let's jump over. They just saw the water and thought, well, obviously, this is the end of the walk then. This is it. Nothing else happens after this. But a simple cue, they knew what to do and they carried on quite happily. They didn't question it. You want me to jump? I'll jump. That's fine. But without the cue there, they just naturally didn't do it. Whereas other dogs would probably have gone, oh, water, brilliant, I'll go through there. But they really didn't. So yeah, it really helped for things. And like you say, styles, asking your dog to go underneath or learning how to climb up and over is a lot more easier, especially if you've got a bigger dog, if you can teach them to do these things. It also means that they only do it on cue rather than just doing it for themselves, they're less likely to get injured because they're not going to try and jump over, a broken bit of fence, or they're not going to try and go through barbed wire or anything like that. They're waiting for the cue to do it, so you've got a bit more safety involved as well.
It's a funny thing to ask, but we're used to, with children when they're growing up, talking about, body confidence as they, do a little bit of sport or gymnastics or whatever it is. Do you feel that dogs could benefit from this sort of thing to develop body confidence in that sense too?
Yes, so we call it body awareness generally in the sports. And there are dogs that are naturally really clumsy, that trip over everything, walk into walls, just haven't got grace at all. Other dogs have, know how to put one foot in front of the other, but if you help boost their confidence in knowing where their body is and knowing that they can do these things, I can get through that gap, I can walk on this weird surface or something that moves, I can jump over this without it being really, really difficult. The confidence boosts, they know where their body is, because most dogs don't know they've got a rear end. It's really bizarre, but they don't really, the rear end kind of follows what the rest of the body is doing. It's why the rear end goes quicker than the front for a lot of dogs, is because the back end just follows along. So by giving them that awareness and that confidence in their own body, you get less injuries because they bang into things less, they pick their feet up better, they can navigate different areas and small spaces and things like that. So sometimes you'll see a dog, if the doors ajar slightly, they won't push the door and come in. They stand there going, I'm trapped, I can't get in ever again because this door is now, a few inches wide. Whereas actually the dog could fit through fine. It's just they don't know what to do. Whereas if they've done some training to go through narrow areas or to push open a door, or to, it doesn't strike them as strange. They just think, oh, yeah, I know what to do here. This is fine. Because they've got the confidence themselves with their own body, but also the confidence that we will back them up. I want you to do these things so you can do it, and I'll praise you and I'll encourage you. So it works in both different ways. But yeah, body confidence and body awareness are huge, huge, huge things for dogs of all ages, because you've got your gangly puppies where the legs are everywhere, and you've got your adult dogs that aren't always paying full attention on where they're going. We had a Labrador who lived with us for a couple of years, and she was a lovely girl, but she had no idea where her feet were. She really didn't know what her feet were doing at all. She could trip over air. She really could. She, at least once a day, she'd walk into something and bang her head on something. But it reduced. It got better the more I did with her, the more I helped her out with where her body was meant to be. It didn't help that she was very long in the body as well, so she didn't really know where her back end, different room. But she got there. She got there, bless her. But yeah, the confidence and the body awareness side of things is one of the main things in dog sports, things like parkour. I also teach canine conditioning and canine fitness, and it's the same thing. It's that body awareness. They know if they tread on something that feels different, it's fine. Don't freak out. It's no problem. Have the confidence to think, oh, okay, other people are walking on this, it must be fine. That's all good. And parkour does that because you're taking them to different places and trying them on different surfaces, different textures and things like that. And it really, really helps them. It helps them for so many things in the future as well. If they were ever to have some sort of an injury and they had to go and have physio, chances are they're going to be on different surfaces. They're going to be in different types of rooms and different places. So the more things they've come across in their life, the more confident they're going to be for that.
Just thinking about this, we take them away from their mothers at 8 weeks.
Oh.
And it's made me think that if we never did that and they were with their mothers, they probably would naturally pick things up from her.
Yeah.
And be okay with different surfaces and be okay going through, because they are with her and with the rest of the pack. They're going to be learning from the older siblings, etc. But our dogs don't have that because they've taken away at a very young age. And some of them have the added complication of being fostered or being, so we do need to have things in place that are going to encourage them to develop, be more confident. And I know that doing agility with Teddy, he'd been a confident dog before, in the sense that I would say he was quite athletic. He's, you know, he's always one of these very active kind of potential athlete type dogs. But when we started doing agility with him, that was quite interesting, because it's like he could run faster or he could leap over things. There wasn't any hesitation that there might have been before. And that's what made me start thinking about body awareness in a dog sense, because I could see in him his confidence just flourished. He was always up for things, was always confident, but suddenly it was like a blossoming that happened. So it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The communication side is important, and you've been talking about how it's tiring both physically and mentally. But that brings us to the tricks side of things. So, because that is primarily a mental thing, and some people are going to think, what a waste of time, you know, and how demeaning for a dog to learn, have to learn. So, Joe, what use of teaching a dog tricks?
So tricks training, you have got a huge world of tricks training. Tricks can be a tiny little thing, such as a nose touch, a giving paw, that's a trick. And tricks can then get as big as you can possibly imagine them. So it can be greater distance work. It can be asking dogs to pick something up and go and put it in something else. You can ask them to, you know, take letters out of a mailbox and go and give it to someone else across the room. You can make it as big or as small as you want. You can chain tricks together, so you can give them one cue and your dog will do several things in one go. But what I like about tricks is that it's so individual. You can have two dogs in the same family that are siblings and do two different tricks with them every day for a week and still have so many tricks left to work on. You can start tricks from the moment your puppy comes home, because you can work on tricks that are safe for them to do. You can work on tricks when dogs are recovering from surgery. So when one of my dogs had giant tumours removed from his body when he had cancer when he was 13. And while he was recovering, he needed to not go anywhere. So he knew tricks, so I worked on tricks training. He worked on things like chin target and a bridge target, so pushing his nose up like this. He worked on watching me. He worked on just laying down and doing crossing paws. You know, he was working on his body and thinking about where his body was. But without needing to jump around and move around loads. So he was tired from his brain work, but he didn't need to try and actually run around to tire himself out. So the tricks came in really, really handy for things like that. You can do them with dogs from any age. And the tricks can be, as you say, they can get silly. Some tricks can go above and beyond, and that's kind of down to the individual handler. There's some tricks that I won't teach my own dogs, and if I'm asked to teach someone in a class, there are certain things that I'll put in place first, because there are some tricks that a dog needs to be, they need to be very strong in the body to do. And if I don't feel they're strong enough to do that, if they haven't displayed certain strength, then I won't teach that, basically, because I don't want to cause any injuries. But a lot of the tricks, majority of tricks, you can adjust them for the dog. You know, I've got small dogs, so there are tricks that you see some of the bigger dogs doing with ease that would be harder for my guys. So I adjust it for them. There's a trick called pickpocket, where you'd have something like a bandana sticking out of your pocket, and you, on cue, your dog comes over and pulls it out. Well, my dogs can't reach my pocket, so I have them walking along a small dog walk first, and they take it. Or I'll hold a bag by the handles, and the bandana sticks out the bag, and they pull it out of that instead. So we work on it. You know, there's different ways of making it work. You can teach dogs to do tricks that, again, are really good for confidence building, but also for husbandry and cooperative care. So if you work with a dog on, again, I mentioned chin target earlier. So a chin target helps dogs with handling around the face area. and with snoot. Snoot is where they stick their nose through your finger and thumb or through your hands that are made as a circle. So it's getting them used to having their faces touched. And I've got a couple of dogs that I'm working with at the minute that just they can't check their dog's teeth or brush them or anything because the dog's so worried. But they're getting to the point where they're much more comfortable. If they put their face into their owner's hands on cue, they're much more comfortable than the hands meeting the face. So we're building it up that way. If you teach your dog to shake paws, then you can cut your dog's nails more easily. You can, get things out of their paws if it's in there. If your dogs are used to doing tricks like roll over or roll on their back, then you need to check their belly for anything that you can. If you need to check to see if anything's caught anywhere or get knots out of their fur. So tricks can actually be helpful for your everyday stuff as well as just being a bit of fun to do. But some tricks can actually tie in again with some of the dog sports. So when you're teaching dogs to go round something or to jump over something and things like that, but your warm-up exercises, if you do a really slow circle with a dog, that's part of a warm-up exercise, but that then becomes twists and spins. When you're asking a dog to do leg weaves on you, that's again, slow it down and you've got part of a warm-up exercise because you're getting a stretch on either side of the body as they're moving. So it just ties in so nicely with so many other things. And I do tricks training with all my dogs, of all their ages. One of my dogs was 16 when she did her trick dog chart title, and she was deaf by then. She had cataracts. I had to retrain some of the tricks to just use hand signals because she couldn't hear me. But she did it. She got her trick title when she was 16 and 3 months old. Bless her heart. And she loved it. I'd get the treat bag out and her tail would be going and she'd be all ready for it. But there were some tricks that by that age she couldn't do. So I didn't do those. I did the ones that she could do and she loved it. She had a great time doing it. So that's what I like. I like that they're so unique, so individual.
And I like the fact that you are tailoring it to help with things that dogs are finding difficult.
Yeah.
So, with Teddy, one of his difficulties is controlling himself because he's so excited.
Yeah.
So tricks is, you kind of need earmuffs, noise, as he gets so excited and he's very vocal. But when I've taught him things that require him to really pay attention instead of anticipating what I'm going to ask next,
yeah,
then that's been really useful because I found that his level of concentration improved. There are so many things that we can do that are useful. Like I've taught him to open and close doors.
Yep.
And now, he can come into a room and you can say to him, Teddy, could you close the door, please? Oh, and he'll close the door. But that's now just a normal day thing. It's not a trick anymore.
No.
Part of the day thing. He will load the washing machine. That was my way of dealing with his interest in clothes when he was a puppy.
Yeah.
So I turned it into a fun game, and then before I knew it, he was loading my washing machine, and I had not planned that. It's so the value, isn't it? Because now there's things that he can be involved with that are part of every day. And I think back to the fact that so many of our breeds are working breeds.
Yeah, yeah.
So what you're doing with the hoops, with the parkour, with the tricks, is you're actually enabling the dogs to do what perhaps they are genetically designed to do, and that's work. And Teddy absolutely loves the job. His tail wagging. I come in, I take off my trainers, he picks them up. I open the door for him, he puts them in the cupboard, and you can't imagine a happier looking dog than Teddy once he has done that.
Yeah.
So this is it, isn't it?
That's it. It's the difference between making your dog do something for the sake of making them do it and teamwork again. Let's work together with this. You're enjoying it. I'm quite pleased you're doing it. So let's go for it.
Yeah, I think that's the value. So what I'm wanting to convey to people watching is that this isn't about your dogs looking cute doing tricks. This is about, as it is with agility and with the hoops and with parkour and everything that we do with our dogs, it's about strengthening the bond, strengthening the trust and the working relationship that exists between us.
Yeah.
Because that then opens up communication between you, and you're going to, I don't like the word obedience because
Yeah.
it's
It sounds controlling, but
fine. But if we work on this with our dogs, quite naturally, what we have then is a working partnership.
Yes.
Would say, and I'm often told, "Oh, what an obedient dog," and I think, no, we have a working partnership,
Yeah.
and that's what we're after. That's the whole point. So, Joe, if people want to do this, can they do this online? Do they have to be in Essex?
No. I do have online. I've got a lot of different things online, from tricks training to combining tricks with things like heel work to music. So where you're working on your obedience side, so you've got your heel work positions and things like that, but you're adding the tricks in. So you're asking your dog to do a lot more for your rewards to be at the end. So there's you need a high level of that obedience to get to heel work to music and doing things like that. But you again can tailor it to your dog. Whereas obedience competition, it's set exercises. Heel work to music, you do whatever works for your dog, basically. So, if they like doing certain things, you make sure you put them in your routine. But online wise, parkour, I've got an introduction to parkour on there, because again, you can do so much from the home to start with. Literally, you could get a cardboard box and there are skills you can teach your dog using a cardboard box that they would never have used before, and afterwards they'll suddenly have more body awareness, more confidence, and you'd find things that you think, oh, I'm glad I taught them that. Never thought that would be becoming useful, but actually I've needed that for something today. And it's surprising where it all ties in, but it ties in so nicely. And because we're treating them as tricks, we're making it more fun and informal, and so our dogs learn better and we enjoy it more. And then when we come to use it in everyday life, it's a lot less stressful for our dogs. One that I teach dogs, so I mentioned Snoot earlier, I also teach them to do hide face. So they put their face into a cone or a Halloween bucket or something like that. If you then need to muzzle train your dog, you've practically got that there because they're putting their nose into something, and you just progress it to doing up the muzzle. So you're part way there already. But because it wasn't muzzle training, it's not serious to us and it's not serious for the dog. It's fun, and it doesn't matter if they get it right first time because it's putting their nose in a cone. Who cares? But
And
then move over to muzzle training and they go, yay, let's put my nose in that. And I get a treat and it's brilliant and everyone's happy.
and that can happen when you least expect it, that you suddenly need to have a muzzle.
Yeah.
I is 8. He's never ever had a muzzle until a month ago.
Right.
And that was, we had to put eardrops in for an ear infection. And he having none of it. And my heart broke when I realized we were going to have to muzzle him. But what I did was exactly what you just said. And I used his knowledge of the words touch,
Yep.
and I turned it into a game where he touched the muzzle and he got a reward. And then the reward came when he actually was allowing the muzzle to be on. And we did that. Do you know, within 10 minutes, I had that muzzle on him.
Fantastic. Especially because he'd have been in pain as well with the ear infection. Yeah.
That's because of all the stuff that had happened before.
Yep.
We was able to learn quite quickly what it was. So this is the value. One other thing, I was thinking, how handy to be online, not just because of distance, but for dogs who are nervous around other dogs to be able
Yep.
to learn their own home. This could be useful.
Yeah. Nervous
So,
of people, nervous of dogs, just traveling, they don't travel well, or even dogs that have just got they're healthy, they can do things, but they can't go to too many places because they're likely to, they've got autoimmune issues and things like that. So they kind of need to be places where they know. Online, you can just, okay, let's just do something now, The dinner's cooking, let's get something open, let's get some tricks going. Off you go.
and for people who are able to come to you physically, but whose dogs are not brilliant in a class. And, you know, agility for Teddy had to be one-to-one because other dogs were just too exciting. So do you do one-to-ones as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most of my dog sports are one-to-one because we just haven't got room in classes. So I've got some people that come one-to-one, just them and their dog, and I've got some people that join forces with a friend and their dog. So they sometimes you've got a dog that isn't maybe keen on other dogs, but they've got one or two friends that they know and they trust. So they club together and they use the session between them and do it that way. I've got one group, I've got 7 people, 7 friends, we're all with the same litter mates, and they all want to do some group training together. So chances of getting in a class together are pretty narrow. So we're going to treat that as their own class. Just do that instead.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I absolutely love what you're doing, and I would love for everyone to go and check out your website. So what is it?
Okay, it's www.dogtraining Essex, ESSEX hyphen or dash Suffolk, which is SUFF for Freddie, OLK.co.uk.
And I will be sure to be putting a link to that in the description box
Thank
to make it so much easier for everyone. So
Excellent.
thank you so much for your time today.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
And I'm sure that our paths will meet yet again.
I hope so. I've got to send you the Dachshund, and then obviously I'm going to send you. I might send you some homework to do with Teddy.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.